Fleming? Fleming, old fellow, how are you?
College closed.
Fleming, I say rouse yourself, sir. This won't do, Watson. He requires some hair from the dog that bit him.
Must have been a huge dog. Shall I check his pulse?
No need. Collect a couple of bottles of strong ale from the public house we passed, will you? Mind it's not small beer.
Some porter for the porter. Sorry, Holmes.
Would you oblige us, Fleming, with your opinion? We're evaluating this ale.
Happy to assist young gentlemen in the pursuit of knowledge. So for science, as you might say. Excellent. I recognise you, don't I?
I'm pleased to think you might. I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Of course you are. Never forget a face, Mr. Holmes. Just takes me a bit longer to focus. You're keeping well? Haven't gained a stone since you went down. I read your exploits and beatings. And this is Dr. Watson, is it? Pleased, I'm sure.
I need to excavate your prodigious memory, Fleming. May I do that?
I enjoy a good mystery. Dig away, sir.
I saw a tattoo on a corpse. Something about it reminded me of Cambridge.
A view of Trumpington Street.
Nothing so definitive. It's a neatly rendered blooming rose. You're familiar with such a figure?
If it was engraved on the subject's backside, it might be the badge of the Tudor Rose.
The Arcane Social Club? Of course. The symbol of England was their sign. I had no idea those rare birds marked themselves.
Since your time, sir. Been a drinking club for more than a decade, carousing and such. Nothing much secret about it. Old boys are ashamed to be associated with the newer members. University may revoke their charter, is what I heard.
The Tudor Rose drew its members from the whole university, didn't it?
Indeed. Over the years, there's been hundreds of initiates.
Do you remember all the Magdalen men?
Their names run together now, but I do recognize most of them.
Regrettably, I don't have a name or a face. Is the artist a local man?
Jack Canvas in Cheapside designed the tattoo version from an old print drawing. I'm told he recently passed over.
Yes, I should have recognized his hand. But my brain was fixed on the subject matter. The delicate petals set along the brambles and the thorns. Unexpectedly lovely. I've seen the painting, of course.
As a symbol, the old boys was thinking they were England's best.
Some of them proved it. But their successors took to advertising. Trying to convince themselves, perhaps.
True quality never commends itself, Mr. Holmes.
Even after all these years, my recollections of this place are so vivid. Is that unusual, Fleming?
Not at all, sir. We are what we remember. As the bard says, even purpose is but a slave to memory.
I have reason to believe my corpse was a maudlin man and a member of the Tudor Rose.
If he came here after 1860, I may have him in my albums.
Could we look through your portraits of the previous classes?
But that's thousands of young gentlemen, Mr. Holmes. 100 or more would have joined the Tudor Rose.
Would the date of a student's matriculation narrow the field sufficiently?
It might. My memory's good, but not flawless. And some of these characters were more memorable than others.
I believe this boy turned 19 in June of 1874 and came to college for the Michaelmas term that year.
Let me check my photographs. Ah, yes, 1874. A rum class. Bright, no question. But rum.
Anybody there who later joined the Tudor Rose?
Let's see. There's Dundalk, the Earl's youngest boy. Died in the Transvaal, I heard. And Lawton is a lord since his pater passed on. An MP, I believe. Oh, yes, his special friend was Pratt. An orphan came to us from India. Strange boy. Don't know what became of him. And Cunard is making his fortune in Australia. That's all, I think.
Thank you, Fleming. Very helpful.
A pleasure, sir. Always a pleasure to see one of my young gentlemen.
We've just time to catch the next train to London.
Excellent. Let's be off.
If you might spare me a moment, Stitch, I would appreciate it.
Right away, Mr. Holmes. I'm just finishing up with Mrs. Rowbottom.
I'll tell you when we're finished, Mr. Rumsey. I'm paying good money and I expect no less than your undivided attention.
I'll grow grey before Mrs. Rowbottom is satisfied.
Claim pressing business, national emergency and so on.
Worthless. I know her type. Obstinate as a mule.
A pointed threat might remove her recalcitrance.
Watson, you surprise me. Besides, have you not remarked the size of her handbag? Who knows what she has in there? What is that racket, Watson?
The treadles of sewing machines, I imagine.
I mean the voices.
Can you not appreciate the dulcet tones of the Orient, Holmes?
My pedestrian mind cannot appreciate what it cannot understand. I beg your pardon, madam. Might I have a brief word with Mr. Rumsey?
No, Mr. Rumsey is not free.
I've decided on a strategy to shift La Rowbottom.
A subterfuge, then. But not too subtle, I hope. It would be lost on her.
She appears to be a woman whose sense of propriety may be vulnerable to judicious tweaking. Follow my lead.
Try not to be too offensive. She's Rumsey's customer, after all.
Among the costumes, the hero of Trafalgar seems a popular choice.
One wonders if the jacket comes sans right sleeve. Perhaps an eye patch may be let.
The fabric of your frock has become a favourite of the demi-monde.
You've seen it elsewhere?
Indeed. Watson, did we not recently see this particular material at the Chelsea Burlesque?
That young woman whom Bingo Oakshott insists on calling his protégée was draped in it. A dress, wasn't it? What there was of it.
You disremember her dress, but she had it on so briefly. No, it was the drawing-room curtains which she wore as a shawl.
Or was it a towel from the loo? Good day to you, madam.
I'm sorry, Stitch. I had to get rid of her.
Oh, I can live without her custom, Mr. Holmes. Much more trouble than it's worth. If you're looking for a job as a floor walker, I'll hire you.
This needle seems to have outlived its usefulness. Might I take it?
You're welcome to it. It served me well. May it serve you, though I can't imagine how.
Has the move to Jermyn Street been advantageous, Stitch?
A bit more money, but I don't laugh so much as I did in Piccadilly.
A more serious sort of clientele comes round here?
They take themselves more seriously anywise. They dress better, more brass, but they're much the same.
I'm not surprised that a man of your experience is undeceived by appearances. What can your practised eye tell me about this button, Stitch?
I'm sure you know it's tortoise shell, has a continental finish, Dutch maybe. The thread is nothing special, sewn to a coat I'd say, not off the peg, custom made, but not too dear.
Available locally?
Not here, I've got the largest inventory in England. Help yourself, you need one.
What can you tell me about this hat, Stitch? Anything of interest?
At the risk of dabbling in your line, I'd say the wearer has a oblong head, obviously big, younger man from the blocking. The style and quality bespeak concern, but not obsession with appearance. Colour probably doesn't signify.
And the shop?
De Groot's a competent tailor, imports all his materials from Amsterdam. He serves a comfortable clientele in South Africa.
I'm afraid I carry some deplorable news. Mr. Pratt has been murdered.
How extremely vexing. I wonder if he remembered me in his will. He's 6 months behind in the rent.
You'll have to absorb that cost. He's paid a higher price.
This is very inconvenient. Mr. Mason always said I was too kind for this world.
I'm sure he was a flawless judge of character. Might we look at Mr. Pratt's effects? It can make no difference to the deceased.
As you're not the police, I think not. Even the defunct have some right to privacy. There may be personal items about.
Of a marketable nature, perhaps? Are you familiar with any of Mr. Pratt's haunts, clubs, saloon bars, salons, and such?
No, his leisure activities are a mystery to me. There was his painting, of course.
Could you identify Pratt for the police if requested?
I should think so. He lived here for more than 3 years. I know his face as my own.
But could you recognize him without reference to his face?
No. But why would I be asked to do that?
Do you know anything about Pratt's years at Cambridge?
Nothing. But he was a university man, that's for certain. I only let rooms to that sort of person.
Do you have a likeness of Mr. Pratt in your flat that we might borrow?
We did not have that kind of relationship, Mr. Holmes.
What kind is that?
You know very well what kind. The kind that exchanges personal photographs. We were not intimate friends. No one could prove that charge.
Did Mr. Pratt have any special friends?
Only Mr. Spacemaker. But I haven't seen him in more than a month.
Spacemaker?
Yes, unusual name, isn't it? Peculiar young man. As pretty as any girl.
The flat lacks its own bathtub. Where did he perform his weekly ablutions?
He had rights to one in the basement, but he preferred Neville's in Charing Cross. No doubt a reprobate's delight. All manner of dissipation and depravity are likely to be served with soap and water.
I'm unfamiliar with that particular pleasure palace. Watson, we need to peruse the flat. Can you occupy Mrs. Mason?
Would you suggest a sharp rap on the head?
Use your imagination and your knowledge of the distaff nature.
This woman confounds my paltry knowledge, Holmes, but appeals to her vanity might not fall on deaf ears.
I'm sure he thought highly of you and confided in you. Perhaps you have the names of his friends or relations in your flat?
I do not. He was orphaned by the Sepoy Rebellion, and the uncle who raised him has been dead for years. He had no family that I know about. Would the ministry consider paying his back rent, do you think?
Perhaps you would like to freshen up and change your handsome frock.
Oh, why would I ever want to do that?
I'm sure that a chief inspector from the CID will be by directly for a chat. They always interview the most important parties in a murder investigation. You'll need to accompany him to Scotland Yard. There'll be numerous photographers and journalists about. I thought you might like to prepare yourself for the ordeal.
Oh, well, I see. Very thoughtful of you, Mr. Holmes. Oh, being in the public eye is such a trial. Excuse me, gentlemen. Close the door when you leave.
I suspect we'll see no more of her.
Capital, Holmes, capital. The appeal to her vanity was irresistible. It overwhelmed her suspicion that we would make off with Pratt's valuables.
I believe she knows the worth of every item in this flat to the last farthing, and it isn't much. Her exit, like everything she does, is calculated. But let us take advantage of her narcissism. You know my practice, Watson. I'm looking for anything unexpected. Useful items, hatpins.
I'm sure. This certainly falls under the heading of unexpected.
Perfect tool for cleaning the hookah. I suspected this pin never pierced a bonnet or a lady's coiffure. Useful items, hatpins. I'll just bring this along. Someone may recognize it.
How can I help you, gentlemen?
There are certainly more rank odours, but it is revolting to discover mildew in towels. I'm certain the authorities would deem it less than hygienic. Hot and wet, a perfect breeding ground for mould. Pasteur would doubtless pay for samples of the captive bacteria.
His institute deals only in virulent and contagious forms, neither of which this is.
Perhaps, but you won't deny it is disgusting. Just a modicum of your garden variety muck. What does this place have against regular applications of soap and water? I believe Thomas Pratt was a patron of these premises. When did you last see him?
Adrian Russell at your service. Were you thinking of joining us here at Neville's? I can make you an handsome introductory offer.
We'd like a private word about Pratt.
What are the chances? At Neville's, his privacy is my business.
I'm now ready to inspect the baths, Russell.
No, you're not. You've no intention of joining up.
Listen, you muscle-bound twit. Neville's is in violation of numerous tenets in the Code of Public Health. Mould, mildew, common filth are rampant. Let us pass, or I'll report these unsanitary outrages forthwith, and you'll be out of business by this evening.
You made your point. I'll try to keep it clean, but there's too much for one person to do. Can't find any decent help. I'll accompany you. Remember, don't be bothering my clients. You can't walk about unsupervised, mister.
The name is Holmes, Mr. Russell, and I not only can, I have done.
Beg your pardon, Mr. Whitney, sir. As for you, that tears it. Bloody foreign tricks! Get me out of this muck!
Bajitsu is hardly a trick, Mr. Russell. Watson, make certain Mr. Russell remains aquatic. I've had enough of his interference.
With pleasure, Holmes.
A fortuitous meeting, Mr. Whitney. I am Sherlock Holmes. After you've replaced my towel, you might ask if I care. Considering your position, Whitney, you might curb your impertinence long enough to discover my purpose.
Your purpose is of no interest. If you continue to harass me, I will take steps.
Naked and enervated? Excuse me, but I doubt your capacity for action. As your attendant is occupied, let's talk about the formula missing from your reading room.
That is a ministry matter. You have no claim to my cooperation, and your brother's obvious indiscretion may be actionable.
My brother's judgment is not likely to be challenged. Yours, on the other hand...
Save your threats. They are ignorant and rude. I speak only on the authority of my superiors, of whom you are not one.
At the moment, you are not accused, Whitney. I'm simply trying to gather information.
You'll get none from me. I know my rights and my duties.
I'll ask you once to reconsider your intransigence.
You waste your breath.
No, my speech perhaps, my patience certainly. My brother nearly killed, and you stand on some inflated idea of your own importance. You fatuous twit. We'll see whose breath is wasted. You will not trifle with me, Whitney. Tell me what you know.
I recognize extortion when I see it. This is not a joke. I'm having trouble breathing.
You'll have to do better than state the obvious.
I had no part in the initial disappearance. It was not my responsibility. I do my job very well. I know nothing about this.
But if pressed, innocent as you are, you might speculate about the guilty party?
Yes. Question the ratchet woman, the Char. She is an internationalist. Have no idea why she's kept on. Could you turn down the heat?
A small taste of Hades for you, I should imagine. Go on.
Many times I've mentioned security is very lax, very slipshod. She could walk off with anything. The heat, Mr. Holmes, could you?
Thomas Pratt has been found dead, Mr. Whitney.
You don't say. Well, nihil nisi bonum de mortuis, but I suspect he had numerous unfortunate habits and the associations to match.
Would you care to elaborate on that obloquy?
The truth defames no one. He was an unhappy man, and I'm sure he indulged in drugs. Died by his own hand, did he?
Hardly. He was assassinated. To punish him and complicate his identification, his face was obliterated. The bullets nearly blew his head off.
Why?
Because he knew something he should not have known. If you're involved in anything you shouldn't be, have a care, Mr. Whitney. Where might I find Mrs. Ratchet?
She lives in some East End hovel.
The East End is vast. Where exactly?
Pratt would know. Well, ask Sir Avery. He's palsy with her. Is it any wonder respect for the British Empire is on the wane? She's the Char. I ask you. I mean, for heaven's sake, I don't take tea with a woman.
Fortunate for her. Describe her, please.
If she's a plain woman.
Brilliant. Colouring, height, weight, facial shape, teeth, distinguishing characteristics?
Who notices such things about the Char?
If you don't want to be parboiled, you better have noticed something.
On her tea breaks she reads. Everything. Reading all the time, classified documents for all I know. And it makes her squint badly. Probably needs spectacles. Are my eyes starting to bulge?
Not to worry, Mr. Whitney. You're a fine shade of lobster pink. Can you conceive of a connection between Pratt's murder and the stolen formula?
There isn't one.
How can you be sure?
I didn't just fall off the back of a turnip wagon. I am mentally acute.
That is palpably false, but for the moment I'll assume you're simply ignorant of a connection. Our conversation thus far has been neither difficult nor painful. It can become both, if you insist.
I've nothing more to say to you on any subject. Just replace my towel and leave.
When did you last see Thomas Pratt?
I truly can't recall, except when we passed in the hall or exchanged duties at the desk. We had only Nevilles in common. Turn down the heat, will you?
There are few things I appreciate less than being lied to, Mr. Whitney.
I'll try to remember that.
Test my patience and I'll make certain you never forget it.